Hello, I'm Kelda Yoon. A group of Pickering councillors and the mayor are speaking out against a fellow local politician today. They're signing a letter to the premier and counterparts across the province warning of extreme hateful views being expressed by the councillor after she appeared on a recent podcast. And they're calling for the province to introduce tougher punishments for those on council who violate codes of conduct. Chris Glover has this story.
Well, this is an elite group that I would like to be a part of.
Well, you are now. Welcome to the family. So, Lisa.
Pickering councillor Lisa Robinson on a far-right podcast July 30th. The podcast host attacking her fellow councillors as pedophiles, sharing their phone numbers.
All right. Phone these pedophiles and tell them how disgusted you are.
The far-right podcaster Kevin Johnston has had a years-long cross-Canada fight in criminal and civil courts. In 2019, for example, an Ontario judge issued an injunction against him and forced him to pay $2.5 million for what the judge described as hate speech at its worst when he called Toronto restaurateur Mohamed Faki a terrorist and a baby killer.
Ugh, dude, go to the gym, for real.
After Johnston attacked Pickering's mayor for his weight, he took aim at a Muslim councillor for being absent from votes around LGBTQS+ issues. And Robinson can be seen nodding along throughout.
Isn't that bizarre? He's a Muslim. He's not supposed to like this stuff. His book says that if a man is a homosexual, you must light them on fire, behead them, or throw them off a cliff. And he's voting for this radical LGBTQ perversion stuff. Wow. That's
I thought I would have an ally with him, like, you know, when I was trying to bring my 3 motions forward, which we're going to get into, but definitely not.
I think it was egregious what was happening on that podcast.
Pickering Mayor Kevin Ash now sending a letter to the Premier asking for stronger penalties for municipal code of conduct breaches, while also submitting a new violation inquiry with Pickering's Integrity Commissioner.
She should have been condemning those words. Instead, she was condoning those words. And I think it's the final straw in regards to an escalating a number of issues that we've had with Councillor Robinson.
In September 2021, the federal Conservatives dumped her as a candidate in a Toronto riding over tweets the party said were Islamophobic that Robinson denied at the time. She was then elected to Pickering Council in 2022. And this past October, Robinson was sanctioned by the city's Integrity Commissioner and docked 90 days' pay for 3 motions she put forward, eliminating gender-neutral change rooms, making drag storytime readings 18+, and a rule that would have blocked pride flags on city buildings.
First of all, I just want to make it clear that I do not condone anything that Mr. Johnson said on his podcast.
In an interview with CBC News, Robinson disavowed Johnston and accused her fellow councillors of disparaging her name.
I'm trying to get the truth about what's happening in Pickering politics and, you know, the corruption, the perceived bribery, the coercion that I'm seeing ever since I became a councillor.
The mayor says he has no idea what she's talking about.
I asked for her to confirm any allegations that I could investigate with our staff. She has yet to respond to that as well.
The rest of council was also invited on the podcast.
And I hope they're watching. I sent a letter in to these pedophiles inviting them to come on the show and maybe counter anything that you're going to say. And not one replied.
I'm not surprised.
And the email was essentially inviting us to come on and defend our positions as pedophiles and those who benefit from having sex with children. So like, right there, I'm obviously not gonna respond to that or engage with that.
Councillor Mara Nagy ignored her invite, choosing to watch online.
I was offended and horrified when it was happening. And that was before they even started in on me.
Morbidly obese, sloppy haircut, big glasses, weird expression on her face. She looks like the ringleader. It looks like she's the one in charge. Does she have like more influence than anybody else?
She's actually a teacher, believe it or not.
I don't know why I didn't expect that. It's part of a pattern, right, for her. So it wasn't a new idea. It's, I think, the most egregious.
Nagy says she's often at odds with Robinson, especially after Robinson penned an op-ed in February against Black History Month and wrote a post about International Women's Day that Nagy called transphobic. Nagy says the hate Robinson spews is putting her security at risk.
I have been followed home. I've had my car scratched. I've been verbally harassed and accosted in public.
This is not about raising your profile. It's not about a political argument. It's wholly and grossly inappropriate behavior, which should end now.
The mayor hopes the province introduces tougher penalties for councillors violating codes of conduct to bring peace back to Pickering Council while not stifling debate. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Mayors from across the province say they're in desperate need of help. Their cities and towns are seeing more people living in encampments and struggling with addictions and mental health issues. And they're pleading with the provincial and the federal governments to help. Queen's Park reporter Lorena Redekop has this story.
There is a humanitarian crisis unfolding in our streets.
Ontario's big city mayors say towns and cities are overwhelmed with an explosion in homelessness and addictions issues. Their new video is a message to upper levels of government.
We can't do it alone. We need the provincial and federal governments to join with us.
If they don't get that extra help, they say the consequences will be dire.
More people will die in our streets unnecessarily. People won't feel safe going to our parks. They won't feel safe going to our downtown business areas. Businesses will close.
They call it the Solve the Crisis campaign. The mayors say trying to deal with these issues is costing them millions of dollars, but their only big revenue source is property taxes. They'd like a single provincial minister responsible for this issue instead of the multiple ministries they deal with now. Plus, they want a task force created and money for 24-hour crisis centers. They acknowledge the province and the feds have provided some support.
It's not enough. And we have been raising this issue over and over again for so many years, especially when it comes to permanent funding that's known, that has certainty wrapped behind it.
They point to some initiatives municipalities are trying, temporary housing and supports to get people out of encampments. They give an example from London. It opened 144 supportive housing units.
Evidence around what works is astounding. In one case, an individual had over 200 interactions with police in 1 year. 200. It went down to nothing, such that the police were wondering if this individual had died.
They say the key is housing.
Often there's an addiction that develops once they're homeless. It often doesn't start with an addiction.
The province points to funding it's already added, calling its homelessness prevention supports historic. And it says it's added more money for addictions and mental health services. Plus, it calls on the federal government to do more.
That's clearly not enough for the province's big city mayors. They also have a message to the public in their new video.
Add your name, say that you care and you want action. The time to act is now.
Hoping letters and public pressure could help with their message. Lorena Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
A video has surfaced showing a cyclist getting hit by a truck on Bloor Street. It happened last month on the same day that a 24-year-old cyclist was struck and killed in Yorkville. And luckily, the cyclist survived in this case, but the incident is adding more fuel to calls for better safety measures. Nama Weingarten has more.
Watching this video, you wouldn't think the cyclist survived this crash, especially seeing what was left of his bike.
Oh, hey, holy smokes.
Oh, people die that way.
Oh, jeez.
It does make me think if I should be biking. Like, I get on my bike and every day I'm like, is this the day that something's gonna happen to me?
The cyclist in the video doesn't want to be identified, but his lawyer says he's still recovering.
We're still doing a lot of diagnostics to see what physical injuries are there, but I can tell you something that's really plaguing him is the psychological impact of something like this. Just knowing how close he was to dying.
In the video, you can see the truck taking a right-hand turn, which is illegal at this intersection at that time of day.
Police say the driver remained on the scene. He was charged with taking an unsafe turn and disobeying a traffic signal.
But David says that's not enough.
Why do we just have paint? Paint is not infrastructure. Paint and even signs don't keep people safe. So we need bike lanes all the way up to the intersection.
This accident happened on the same day a 24-year-old cyclist was struck and killed just down the street. She was the 5th cyclist to die on the city's streets this year, making this the deadliest year for cyclists in Toronto since at least 2019. Vision Zero was created to tackle this problem.
I would say in general, as we build more cycling facilities, there's expected to be more cyclists on the road and more exposure to collisions.
Shada says one of the first things that jumped out to her in the video was the lack of side guards on the truck. Mandating them is up to the federal government, and she says the city has already written to them about the need for regulations. Taking questions from reporters today, Mayor Olivia Chow called on them to act once again.
It's time the federal government mandates side guards on trucks. Side guards have been mandated in Europe for many, many decades, and it showed a 60% reduction of fatalities and serious injuries.
We reached out to Transport Canada and Restform Construction, who owns the truck, but are yet to hear back. Nama Weingarten, CBC News, Toronto.
And you are looking at a live shot of the city, overcast and 23 degrees right now. The city is under a special weather statement with plenty more wet weather headed our way. Riley Lachuk joins us with the details. Hey, Riley, how's it looking out there?
Well, Kelda, the special weather statement is where I'm going to start this evening, which impacts the GTA, the Greater Toronto Hamilton area, even into places like sort of Kitchener down through into the Niagara region as well. 25 to 50 millimeters of rain generally in this area in blue, up to 50 to 75 millimeters for places like Kingston through Belleville into Ottawa and parts of Quebec. This is all part of 2 areas of low pressure that are going to sort of converge over eastern Ontario, western Quebec. So we've started to see a little bit of cloud build in through the later afternoon hours here. But if I widen out, you can see these 2 areas of low pressure. So we'll start with this one here, the remnants of what was Tropical Storm Debbie, the leading edge of that starting to make its way through upstate New York. And this area of low pressure here over Lake Superior, those 2 bringing us quite a bit of weather and quite a bit of wet weather as we get through the evening hours tonight, especially, and into the overnight hours. So as we get through into the early morning tomorrow, that rain does start to move in waves by the time we get to first thing Friday morning, a wet start to the day tomorrow. But you can see most of that rain off into upstate New York, into the Ottawa region, where we could see up to 75 millimeters of rain, potentially more, bringing with it that risk of flash flooding as we get into the later part of Friday. Saturday, back to mainly sunny sky, and that's kind of the pattern we get as we get into the weekend and into next week. So here's the track of what was Tropical Storm Debbie itself, as you can see, missing the Greater Toronto area, but really tracking into Quebec before it hits sort of Atlantic Canada. In terms of rainfall accumulations, this particular forecast model, I think it's a little bit on the low side. I think we're looking at about 20 to 30 millimeters for the Greater Toronto area, and you can see some of those higher amounts as we get through into the Ottawa region. So starting tomorrow morning, temperatures look like this, above seasonal for an overnight low for this time of the year, starting at 23s for the GTA and into the Ottawa region, even at 20 degrees first thing in the morning. Here's your 5-day forecast as we get through into the weekend. So up to 30 millimeters of rain by the time this is all said and done, through into the afternoon hours tomorrow. And then we're a bit below seasonal with a chance of showers on Sunday once again, Kelda, and back up to more seasonal and sunnier conditions to start next week.
All right, thanks so much, Riley. After last month's severe flooding across the GTA, some developers are adapting their building plans to offer better protection from heavy rainfall. Olivia Bowden takes a look.
Toronto felt like it was a little underwater on July 16th when widespread flooding hit the city and the GTA. It was a threat to safety, and the damage to personal property is estimated to reach $1 billion, according to the Insurance Bureau of Canada. Toronto is looking at how to deal with increased rainfall.
We must take action to build the resiliency of our city and works to mitigate the impact of these storms.
Laura Tozer studies how cities can change to deal with climate impacts. She says she'd like to see GTA neighborhoods have less pavement and more plants.
They can absorb a lot of this water rather than just kind of shooting it into all of our basements. And under discussion now, especially after the recent rainfall event, is a stormwater charge for commercial and industrial properties.
Tozer says that kind of system uses soil and plants to manage floodwaters. And over in Mississauga, one development is planning to do just that.
Communities, developers, cities need to take action here.
Lucas Wagner is the Vice President of Development and Construction at Brightwater. The 29-hectare development will feature condos, townhomes, and even a school. But it will also have what's called a bioswale system. He says the kilometer-long system is not just built to absorb rainwater, it also filters it. 7 layers of soil clean it before it flows back into the nearby Lake Ontario. And Wagner says though it's been challenging to build green, developers need to step up.
I think this is something that we should be looking at for future developments, and I think in actual fact, the municipalities can be looking at this for some of their future developments as well.
Toronto is currently implementing a plan that will cost $4.3 billion over a decade to mitigate rainfall, but city staff reports say financial constraints will make that challenging. And currently, Toronto only has a handful of bioswales up in North York.
We're stuck in a innovative example phase. We really need to get to green infrastructure as the new normal.
And that's what developers like Brightwater are striving for. Olivia Bowden, CBC News, Mississauga.
Students and staff at Eastview Public School in Scarborough are celebrating after getting a new baseball diamond thanks to the Jays Care Field of Dreams program.
It benefits us in a good way because if we can know how fun really feels like education, we would have education in the morning and then later we can have some physical activity.
I played baseball a lot of times at the park near my grandma's house, and I really enjoy it.
The school was one of 14 selected to receive their Field of Dreams. Finally, tonight, we are less than 2 years away from the opening tip-off for Toronto's new WNBA team, and there is plenty of work left to be done. The team still doesn't have a name or logo. As Greg Ross explains, the public is now being asked to help.
The president of Toronto's WNBA team was making the rounds today, promoting this new website. NameYourTeam.ca is where fans can log on and make suggestions on a name for the city's newest franchise. Teresa Resch says anyone in Canada can take part.
We look forward to hearing from all Canadians across the country because we really want to be Canada's team.
Some people we talked to here in Toronto had some suggestions. This woman thinks the name should roll off the tongue.
Toronto Tornadoes.
Why do you say that?
I don't know, just they both start with a T.
This man thinks the name should be representative of the city.
I like the Towers. I remember that was batted around as a possibility when the Raptors were joining.
Maria Blackett would like the team to stick with a Jurassic theme, like Toronto's NBA team.
You know, a good name would be the Toronto Velociraptors, because they're fast and mean.
But isn't that the same as the men's team? They're the Raptors.
Well, yeah.
Raptor is short for Velociraptor.
Maybe you're right. I have to go.
If coming up with names is not your thing, the team still wants your input.
Ideas about colors, ideas on if you want it to have a feminine twist, ideas, do you want it plural, do you want it singular, do you want it about an animal? So any ideas and inspiration you can share, and then from that we're going to take all that information and we're going to get some great themes that we can then work from.
There were plenty of ideas floating around today on possible color schemes for the team.
Red and white.
Because of Canada?
Because Canadian flag.
Something bright. Move away from red and white, or yellow and purple or something.
Toronto's WNBA team will play its first game in May of 2026. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks for joining us.